on the sheet, on the handout. So, yeah, y'all can share that. We'll just look at that picture real quick, and then we'll get back to the scripture. I want you to see this picture. Does anybody know what this picture is, and what this occasion is? It is a celebration. That would be a good thing, and my child would not be in counseling right now had they won the World Series that year. Yeah, Josh Hamilton was a baseball player. This is with the Texas Rangers, and they had won the game and were going to the World Series, in which Game 6 they would crush my child's soul right out of him because Dad woke him up with 2 outs left in the 9th inning for them to win the World Series, and they didn't. So I'm the one that got his 10-year-old child up to watch the Rangers win the World Series, and then they end up losing. And so, but counseling's going well for him. So anyway, but no, this Josh Hamilton gets into the professional baseball, excellent baseball player, MVP baseball player, and he gets injured, starts running with the wrong crowd, starts hanging out at the tattoo parlor, which will always do that to you, right? All right? And ends up getting involved in drugs, alcohol, you name it, during that time when he was injured and just had nothing to do positive. And so became such an alcoholic that really pretty much if he got around it, smelled it, saw it, tasted it, anything, that it would just relapse immediately, which he has several times since that picture was taken. But when they did win the game and were going to the World Series, I believe it was going to the World Series, his teammates came around him and said, we are not going to have a champagne celebration. Instead, we're going to have a Mountain Dew celebration. So you can see the picture they're holding up, and they are showering. He's in the middle of that little scrum. He's in the middle, and they are just dousing him with bottles, 2-liter bottles of Mountain Dew. All right? Now, why would you do that? Why would you forego the opportunity to do the champagne thing and spray the champagne all over it, which really drives me insane because it's like you do 14 champagne things by the time you win the World Series. It's like, yay, we won our first game. Champagne everywhere, all right? And you make the playoffs, and then you, one more time, and then one more time. I'm like, guys, just save it until you win the World Series, all right? I don't know. If I was coaching, no, one time. You only get to do it if you win the World Series. But they're doing it. Now, why did these players and coaches and team management, why did they forego this champagne celebration? Just for him. Okay, hang on, let's go one at a time. You said, okay. But why would they forego their joy and celebration and their freedom for him? Unity, I like that. Team, good. They do care about him, all right? Are you reading my notes? All right, well, we're going to get to that. Yes. No, but this is the point. What did they do? They said, we have every right in the world to do this champagne celebration, but if we do, what's going to happen to our friend, our teammate, our brother? And so they said, we will not do that. We will do this instead because we love our brother. We care about our brother. We care about the teammate and the unity of our team. All right? So I just wanted to see that picture just so we can kind of float that out there. So as we study through this, I hope you see that. This is the point. This is the point of 1 Corinthians 8. It starts off with about, and your translation probably says food, but about things. It doesn't say food there. It just says about things offered to idols or sacrificed to idols. It's idolothusios. All right? Ido means to look at. Idolothusios is to sacrifice something, to kill something. So about the things that have been killed according to a sacrificial system. All right? This is, and a lot of people don't know this. When Jesus refers to The good shepherd versus the bad shepherd, the thief. The thief comes to steal, kill, which is the word thusios, to sacrifice. It doesn't mean just to murder or just to randomly kill it. It means to sacrifice it or to offer it. So the thief comes to steal the lamb, all right, to sacrifice it and to utterly destroy it, which we'll get to that word, apolumai, later on, okay? But these are the things. What about these things that are offered to idols, right? And it's a real generic question. Remember, he's fielding questions at this point. So what do we do with these things that were offered to idols? We know that we all have knowledge, all right? It means we all have an opinion, all right? We have an opinion as to what is right, what is wrong. We have an informed opinion, all right? Sometimes we have isolated opinions, and sometimes those opinions are relational, okay? Now let's think about the difference between an isolated opinion, which doesn't impact anyone else, and a relational opinion, all right? Those of you that are married, all right, you don't get to have isolated opinions, do you? All right? Because your opinion affects your spouse, all right? And so can be conflict when one person has one opinion and they aren't thinking in relative terms, they're thinking isolated. And this is my opinion, I'm going to do whatever I want because this is what I think, all right? So this idea, we know that we all have opinions. Look at the next line. The next line is key. But knowledge or an isolated opinion inflates one with pride or puffs somebody up. Phusios, all right? It's when you have a furnace and you're trying to make it really hot, what do? The billows, all right? The billows are a phusios, all right? The billows, you press those things, these pillow type things. You're phusios, you're puffing this thing up with pride. But love or a relational opinion does what? Builds up, okay? Literally it's the imagery of a house being built up, oikodome, all right? It's this house being built up. So knowledge, we all have opinions, all right? And my opinion, isolated from everyone else, can be whatever it is, all right? But it does tend to puff us up, all right? This is my opinion, and I think I'm right, right? And if everybody else would agree with me, everybody else would be right as well, correct? And we'd be much happier if everybody would just agree with my opinion, all right? That's not how it works, though, all right? And Paul is trying to say, look, you can have an opinion, but just know this. If you take your opinion and you don't care about what anybody else thinks, then all it's going to do, your opinion is going to puff you up. It's going to make you feel important. Now, when you take that opinion and run it through sort of a filter of relationships, now what happens? You start to love people. You can speak into people's lives. You can touch people's lives in different ways, and you can inform them and encourage them, okay? But so there's a difference between an isolated opinion and a relational opinion. Everybody good with that? Okay. 2, this is a backhanded insult. If anyone thinks he knows anything, so if you think you have a pretty good opinion about something, he does not yet know as he ought to know it. Translation what? You ain't that smart. You're just not that smart. I don't care how smart you think you are, you're just not that smart, all right? What character in the Bible would we apply this to? Who thought he had all the answers, and God kind of showed up and went, you're just not that smart. You got a whole lot more to learn. Job, exactly. Read through Job, all right? What are we, 40 chapters, 42 chapters, something like that, all right? Verse 36, Job's like, I don't understand. I know this, and I know this, and I know this, and I know this, and you're wrong, and you're wrong, and you're wrong, and you're wrong, and everybody else is wrong except for me. And then God shows up in chapter 38, and Job like crawls underneath the table. Where were you when I did this? Where were you when I did this? Where were you when I did this? Oh, and where were you when I created this, and when I did this, and when I did this, and when I did this? And in chapter 40, it's like Job crawls out from the table. I spoke of things I do not know. All right? This is what Paul is saying right here. Even if you think you know everything, if you think your opinion is grand and it doesn't even matter, it's probably because you haven't spoken to somebody else. Because in isolation, your opinion's pretty valid, isn't it? All right? Hey, hop into politics. Go out there and start posting stuff all over the place. Everybody's going to agree with you, right? Post your opinion on Facebook. See what happens. Everybody's going to agree with you, right? No, because people have different opinions. All right? And even in Proverbs, it says the first person to speak always seems right. The first person to speak always seems right until somebody asks a really good question, okay? All right, verse 3 is one of Paul's squirrel moments. He has the idea of God and knowing things running through his mind, and so he just runs with the squirrel here. He says, but if anyone loves God, he is known by him. What that has to do with the rest of this chapter, I have no idea, all right? It's just Paul chasing a squirrel here real quick, okay? Come back to it, 4. But about eating food, all right? About eating these things that are sacrificed to idols, implying what? Food, okay? About eating these things, then, we know, one, an idol is nothing in the world. Is an idol nothing? What do you mean by that, Pamela? What do you mean it's nothing real? It's real, isn't it? It is an actual object, right? If my podium was an idol, this is an actual object, right? Okay. What else? How else would you describe it? It's not eternal. Okay. Somebody made this, right? And I could break it, right? What happens if I break it? Am I going to be in trouble? We heard a speaker one time, and he was talking. He was in, I want to say he was in Vietnam or Cambodia or something like that, and he said he went to this shrine, this massive shrine there for whatever Buddhist or Hindu, or I guess probably Buddhist, and they had this massive Buddha thing up there, and all these people were coming up and burning incense and burning candles and burning all this stuff, and everybody was just bowing in worship to this one thing. And they said at the same time there were 4 guys behind it that were repairing it. They were fixing this big Buddha thing. And he said it was heartbreaking to him, but to see that people worshiping this thing that was being repaired at the same time. And he said that just didn't work. So an idol is nothing in this world, all right? It's what? It's a block of wood. It's a piece of stone, okay? Now, is that how everybody sees it, or is that how Paul sees it? Okay, we all have different paradigms, right? We all have different perspectives. We see these different. So about eating food, here's his advice to the church. We know that, number 1, an idol is nothing in the world, all right? Number 2, there is no God but one. And if there is one God, and that one God has said, don't even bother with idols, then idols are what? In the grand scheme of things, in our paradigm as Christians, we believe that idols they're pieces of wood. They're blocks of stone. And they don't represent anything. They have no power. And the thing that people are sort of worshiping through this idol is nothing either. So when food is sacrificed to this God represented by this idol, what is it? Is there anything to that? No. It's just barbecue. Okay? It's a hamburger. All right? And can you eat that? Yeah. Hamburger, good. Barbecue, good. All right? Yes, but it was sacrificed to an idol. A what? It was sacrificed to a block of wood that represents something that's not there. Good barbecue. All right? What's the problem? All right? But this is Paul's understanding, okay? And this is Paul's understanding to them. Now, is there some prohibition anywhere in the Bible that says thou shalt not eat food sacrificed to idols? Is that in the Old Testament? Y'all look very puzzled in this moment. It is a trick question. I don't know that there is a specific prohibition about eating food sacrificed to idols. I don't know that it's in there. I don't know that it's in the Old Testament law. I think it's such an obvious thing that yeah, the priest, that's Torah. That's worship, putting things, burnt offerings to God, all right, not to idols. But yes, the priest would eat, and even the people would bring their own offerings, and then they would consume them themselves. All right, that's just how it worked, okay? Hold on just one second, Josh. All right, and so here's the question is, where was this prohibition? And Paul is having to address this. And I think because Paul is having to address this, there's not a clear cut. Here it says in Numbers 3:6, don't do that. All right, Josh, what do you have? Simple answer, yes. Because anything having to do with an idol is off limits, all right? That would be a form of worship. To eat or partake in this food sacrificed to an idol would then be to recognize that idol is representing some form of God other than God, and you're making an idol, so you're getting commandment number 1, you're getting commandment number 2, and then you're encouraging others to partake in this, which is all capital punishment from all this, okay? But we, in writing to the Corinthians, are not under Old Testament law, right? Everybody okay with that? All right, these are Corinthians. These are Gentiles, okay? And we had an issue that we resolved in Acts 15. All right, what do we tell these Gentile converts who don't have? Do we tell them they have to have that little minor surgery on a major part? No, we don't have to. But we did come up with 4 rules. Number 1, no sexual immorality. That's a design thing. Anytime that comes up to play, it's always prohibited. But then we come up with 3 more. And one of them is do not eat food sacrificed to idols. Now, that was probably about 10 years earlier they came to that conclusion. And I would argue that Paul throws that out eventually. Paul eventually is not going to say that is sacrosanct forever and ever. That will be the rule. You are never, ever, ever to eat food sacrificed to idols. Because what he's going to do is he's going to come to the conclusion that idol is nothing, and it's not representing any God. That's just food. Let's eat. All right? So he's going to take one of those rules. Now, again, sexual immorality, still on the table. Because that's a design thing, not a cultural thing. All right? A little different, okay? Hopefully I didn't confuse you too much, okay? So here's this knowledge. Here's the knowledge that he's working off of. This is Paul's working knowledge. Paul's looking at these things sacrificed to idols, and he says, look, the idol is nothing, and there's only one God, and he has nothing to do with that. So when you sacrifice that piece of meat to that idol, which means nothing, to that God who is nothing, then all you have is barbecue, all right? And therefore, it's good to go. All right, now does everybody fall in line with that? No. All right? So let's unpack his thinking a little more. All right, so this is that knowledge. When we talk about the knowledge, that's number 1 and number 2. Idol is nothing. There's only one God. And he's going to describe the pagan culture's theology in 5. For even if there are so-called gods, whether in heaven or on earth, for them, this is your culture, all right? All throughout Corinth, all throughout Greece, all throughout this area, there are gods everywhere, right? There are temples everywhere. You look at Corinth, there's 3 or 4 temples right there in that city center, all right? And they have all this worship, and they do all these things. And really, the only place you could buy meat was at the temples, all right? This is where everything was focused around here. And so you would buy meat from these temples, and it would be meat that was sacrificed to idols. So if you're going to eat, you pretty much had to go there to get all this, all right? There are so-called gods, whether in heaven or on earth, as there are many gods and many lords. This is their understanding. This is the pagan Corinthian understanding of gods, all right? That's one paradigm. The other paradigm, yet for us, verse 6, yet for us as Christians, there is one God who is the Father, and all things are, and I'm going to translate this, all things are out of him, out of him, and we exist, and the word exist is not in there, and we into him. Isn't that an interesting relationship? All the things that exist are out of him, and all of those things that exist that have been created are now into him. So God existed and he created out of himself, and what was his expectation? What's the relational expectation of this? that everything that was existed by him would return into him. All right? For his glory, for his honor, for his majesty, for his power, for his dominion, all these things. All right? So what happens when we do not return that which God has created and blessed, and we take it and we put it into something other than our worship of him? What happens to the expectation now? All right? You see where we're going with this thing? This idea of the relational, that God created it for it to return to him. And he does it through Christ. And there is one Lord, one kurios, one master, one boss, all right? And his name is Jesus Christ. That's why I've said this 100 times, right? When you look in Acts and when you look in the Gospel of Luke, anytime you see the word the Lord, he's always referring to Christ, always. So when it says in Luke, the Lord said this, he's always referring to Christ, because this is Luke's understanding, because he sits under Paul and learns from Paul, and Paul always refers to Jesus Christ as his Lord. Why? Because in Acts 9, Jesus got his attention, right? On the road to Damascus, he says, "Who are you, Lord?" Done. That was his name from then on. That was his identity from now on. I'm the slave, I'm the doulos, you're the kurios, the Lord, okay? And there's one Lord, Jesus Christ, and all things are through him, and we exist through him. So again, this in and out kind of thing, of this relationship that God has created us, and it's supposed to return back to him. And this is Paul's understanding of worship and his theology. All right? Any questions on that? That's a deep stuff right there. So think through that when you go home tonight. All right. 7. However, not everyone has this knowledge, or better stated, it could be this knowledge is not in everyone. All right? What knowledge? What knowledge is not in everyone? Paul says, I have a knowledge. My knowledge is, number one, what? Idle is nothing. All right? Idle is a block of wood. It's just matter. It has absolutely no theological depth, strength, anything to it. Nothing. All right? And the thing that represents, some other God, is no God, because there's only one God, and that God says no idols whatsoever. So anything that has an idol is, that by definition, not anything to do with God. That's the knowledge. So not everyone has this knowledge. Not everyone thinks like I do, all right? Because how did the Corinthians think? That idol represents what? That God. You sacrifice food to it, you eat this food, and this is a form of what? Worship, all right? So when I eat the food sacrificed to that idol, I'm therefore worshiping that idol who represents that God. But Paul says not everyone has this knowledge, okay? In fact, and this is where we get into sort of a little bit of a gray area, because what you're going to have is Paul, who is very clear that he has this knowledge and he understands this, and then he's got the pagan culture that fully runs into this and wants to do the whole eating the food sacrificed to idols, right? But what about the converts, the recent converts to Christianity in Corinth? Where are they? Are they with Paul in, I know this and I know this? Or are they with the pagans going, this is my worship? Where are these Corinthian converts that Paul is writing to? Pamela, you said it, baby Christians? Yeah. Very, very much still on milk. Because this is the Corinthian culture too, all right? So 7, let's do it again. However, not everyone has this knowledge, or this knowledge is not in everyone, all right? And I love the way Paul's so sensitive to this. Why isn't Paul yelling at him? Why don't you all know this by now? Why don't you know this by now? You should know this by now, and you should be ready to this, and I'm going to eat meat, and I'm going to do whatever I want because you should know better by now. He doesn't do that, does he? Very gentle with him. Very gentle with him as he talks through it. In fact, some have been so used to idolatry up until now. All right, let's let that phrase sink in a second. Some have been so used to. It's the Greek word sun ethos. Sun means with. Ethos is your ethic, okay? That this is the shared ethic of the community. the shared ethos, if you want to say it that way, all right? And the ethos of that community was what? There are these gods, these idols represent, these temples are where we worship these gods. We sacrifice food to them, we then eat it, and that becomes our ingesting of worship, okay? Now, along with the food sacrificed to idols, what other forms of worship were there for these pagan gods, especially in Corinth? Yeah, sexual immorality, the temple prostitutes. So you go then, not only do you eat the food sacrificed to idols and therefore worship, but you have sex with these temple prostitutes, and that is also a form of worship, okay? And so this is their culture. This is their shared culture, and this is how they roll, all right? And Christianity is diametrically opposed to this, all right? It's completely different. So they have, some of them are so used to idolatry up to this point, up to now. Why does he say now? Because now what are they? Now they're Christians. Now they're followers of Christ. And now what happened to that paradigm of this is how I worship my God or my gods? It's out the window, okay? But do you immediately go, and now I worship this way? And now it has no effect on me whatsoever, all right? In fact, some have been so used to idolatry up until now that when they eat foods offered to an idol, their conscience or their understanding or their grasp, which dictates your guilt or your pleasure or your devotion or your confidence or all these things, your conscience being weak, lacking strength, asthenos, all right? You don't have the strength, is defiled. So think about the person who one day is a pagan and somebody comes and Paul comes in, or Aquila and Priscilla or Apollos comes in, shares the gospel with him, and they go, that's awesome. I love that. The Holy Spirit moves. The Holy Spirit does his work in that person's life, and he goes, I want to be a follower of Christ. And today I'm starting to follow Christ. And all of a sudden somebody comes along and goes, here, have a hamburger. What are they thinking in this moment? On that day, on the day they're converted, what are they thinking? Well, awesome, because I know that idol is nothing, and I know there's only one God, so therefore it's all good. Does it work like that? Why not? You don't shift paradigms that easily? All right, what else? And does Paul see that? Do you see what Paul is saying? And again, he's not harsh with them. He's not demanding of them. He's saying, look, guys, you need to understand, not everyone has this knowledge. Not everyone has the knowledge that I'm trying to convey to you. Because they're so used to idolatry that in their mind on this day, all right? So yesterday, eating meat sacrificed to idols was worshiping that idol. Well, today, what is it? Now it's, whoa, I can't do that because it's still sacrificing and worshiping that idol, and I can't do that because now I worship Christ. 10 years later, what's it going to be? Paul is what it's going to be, all right? Because Paul has had, what? How do you get from that shift in the paradigm to where Paul is? How do you go from I'm sacrificing food to this idol, I therefore eat it and I worship that God, and the next day it's like, ooh, I can't do that anymore, to 10 years later, Paul's going, look, idol's nothing, only one God, let's eat. How do you get to that point? Is it just time? Studying? What else? Okay, a little theological study, all right? Practice? Fellowship? Do you do this isolated? Do you do this just by yourself? Yeah, you fellowship with one another and you start to go, I was thinking this, well, I thought that too, and this really helped me to understand this, and therefore I can understand this now. And I can see what this is doing, and I understand the process now. All right? Which I think God, just like God selected Moses because he grew up in the palace to come and bring out the children of Israel, I think Paul was a perfect one. Why? He was a Roman citizen raised in a Greek city at the feet of Gamaliel, the best Jewish teacher around. So this Jewish man could go to a Greek culture and deal with a Roman governing structure. So Paul was the ideal person to do this, okay? So what he's saying is, look, guys, don't expect people to just turn on a dime and understand this, all right? Because we may have this knowledge, but they don't, all right? And if we push them too far, they could get hurt, all right? Anybody watch the Olympics? Anybody watch the Little Olympics? Ski jumping is my favorite. Y'all with me? How crazy do you have to be to do this? All right? I don't know how you start this. How do you start ski jumping? And we watched the movie Eddie the Eagle at our house about 100 times, and Ashley loves that movie. But ski jumping, it's real easy, right? You don't do a whole lot. You just sort of stand there, and then all of a sudden you get to the end, and you just whoo, and then you land. All right? So if somebody that's been doing it for 20 years can just hop up there and do that, why can't you? How well would you do that first time out? Yeah, besides, because a lot of us are old enough, we remember the wide world of sports, the thrill of victory, and what? The agony of defeat, and this guy helicoptering off the end of the ski jump. Y'all are too young to remember this, all right? Just go look at Wide World of Sports, all right? And you see this guy getting to the bottom, and he falls as he's going, and you see them just skis everywhere, garage sailing all the way into the air, all right? And I think Paul sort of has this expectation that you're not going to be able to just slap your skis on and jump like everybody else does it. It's going to take time to shift this paradigm. All right? And here's the point of 1 Corinthians 8. Don't expect people to be able to just believe like you believe and know what you know right off the bat. Be patient with them. Be loving. Have an opinion, but have it in a relationship, not isolated. Because if you isolate your opinion, what do you do to people? You destroy them. All right? You're the guy going, well, you should be able to jump off the skis now because you're a Christian now. Just go. Just do like I did. Even though you've been doing it for 10, 15, 20 years. All right? And what will it be? It will be the agony of defeat, you flying off there. All right? So that's his point. He's saying this weak guy is going to be, defiled. Means soiled. Why? Because what's going to go on in his mind if you force him to do this? He's going to feel what? The conflict, guilt, betrayal. Because why? Because his paradigm has not shifted yet. Be patient with him, all right? And this is a real moment, isn't it? Because some people in the church in Corinth, do you think they've made the adjustment? You think some people in the church have adjusted to this? Yeah, absolutely, all right? And there are some people, I'm a pretty much a black and white thinker. You know, if you tell me something, I can shift pretty quick, all right? And if you tell me that idol's nothing, that God's nothing, you can eat all you want. I'm like, all right, let's go. Let's go eat. Where other people, and it's just personality, all right, they'll be slower to kind of make that transition. All right, but Paul's point is this. Your knowledge is going to puff up. If you will love people, you will build them up. So be patient with them. Verse 8. Food is not going to make us acceptable to God. Does anybody have a different translation on that in their text? Food will not make us acceptable to God. Bring us near. All right. It's the Greek word paristemi. All right. Para means next to, and histemi means to be set in place. It's not going to set us up with God. It's not going to cause us to worship. It's not an act of worship. Eating is not an act of worship. Maybe I can put that on the sign at Big Jake's. All right. Sometimes it is, amen? All right? You can worship God with a little food right there, all right? But Paul is saying, look, guys, this is not a game changer. You eat, look at the text. We are not inferior or we're not lacking if we don't eat. So if I don't eat that food, I'm not lacking anything. Right? I'm not falling short. This is the idea of this word inferior here, is the same word Paul used when he says, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. So he's saying we're not falling short if we don't eat. So quit worrying about food. And we are not, and the translation says better. Anybody have a different word for better right there? No? Worse off. It's this. We're not abounding if we do eat. It's parasuo. It's to overflow. All right? It's if we don't eat, it's not we're going, oh no, I didn't worship. And if we do eat, it's not like, oh, now look at all my worship. No, eating has nothing to do with worship. But don't, in your mind, because you know that this idol is nothing, that there's only one God, and this food sacrifice to idols is not an act of worship, quit getting hung up about eating, all right? But be careful. Be careful, because there are people who still hold on to this paradigm that are moving in our direction. So food's not going to make a difference. 9, but here's the issue. It's not about food, but be careful or look. It's the word blepo, all right? The Greek word blepo means to see, all right? Look around, keep your eyes open, that this right or this authority, anybody have a different word? You could put privilege in here, you could have put freedom in here, this choice, all right, of yours in how many ways? No way. But be careful that this right that you have, knowing this idol is nothing, this God there's only one God, food, it's all just food. Be careful that this right of yours in no way becomes a stumbling block to the weak. Anybody ever stump their toe? Don't you hate that feeling of, I just stumped my toe, and I've got about a half second more before that nerve gets up to my brain, and it just knocks you over. You ever broken their toe, stumping their toe? I did one time. In Ukraine, broke my toe, by the way. All right? Still don't know how exactly I did it. Yeah, broke it, just swelled up, oh, crazy. This is the exact word, all right? This is the word proskopto, all right? It means to stump your toe, all right? So don't let this right cause your brother to stump their toe and cause them pain, all right? What's the greater concern? You eating what you want to eat, or your brother stumping their toe, stumbling over this? Again, what's Paul trying to tell them? Don't worry about food. Don't feel entitled. Be loving. Don't be entitled. Be loving. 10. He's going to give an example. All right. So first word there is for. So you can throw in there example. For example. So he's going to put a scenario on the table. Okay. So if someone sees you, the one who has this knowledge, what knowledge? Idols are nothing. There's only one God. Food sacrificed to it just tastes good. Just barbecue, all right? So if someone sees you, the one who has this knowledge, dining in an idol's temple. They may have a different word for dining. Eating. It's actually the word reclining, all right? So think about this. When Jesus goes to the Last Supper, what do? They recline at the table. Y'all with me on that? It's the word for reclining, which implies what? You're going to eat, all right? So if someone sees you, and again, he's thinking if someone without this knowledge sees you who does have this knowledge, all right, that's totally comfortable with eating this because it's nothing. But if someone who doesn't have this knowledge is kind of freaking out here, all right, sees you dining in an idol's temple. Are you freaking out if you have this knowledge and it's found its way and it's had time to progress and mature in your life? Are you freaking out? No, you're thinking good food, okay? In fact, Paul, I think it's in the Romans 14 passage. I think Paul in that passage says, if someone offers you food, don't ask them where it came from. Just eat. Now, if they tell you, hey, by the way, this came from the temple of Mars, and so just wanted to make sure you're aware of that because I know you Christians are weird about that. At that point, what do you have to do? You got to go, wait, I'm sorry, I can't eat that. Because in their eyes, this is food sacrificed to idols, and therefore if I eat it, I'm therefore worshiping the idol. Okay? So everybody okay with that? All right. So So I'm cool with this because I have this knowledge. But this one who sees it, won't his weak, or sort of this non-strong, this strength, this is the idea. Won't his weak conscience be encouraged to eat food offered to idols? Which is an excellent question. If someone were to see Paul go into Corinth, and Paul's just kicking back at one of the idols, having a hamburger and a whatever, right? And he's just eating away. What if somebody who got converted days before, a week before, or whatever, looks at and sees that, and they're like, well, Paul's doing it. I guess it's okay if I do it. But have they made that shift yet? They don't have the knowledge yet. They may have they may have heard the words, but they haven't really shifted that paradigm yet. And so they're going to go, I guess it's okay. And they're going to sit down and they're going to eat in the temple. And how are they going to feel? What's going to be their experience in this moment? Are they going to go, well, I feel great. I'm just like Paul. No, they're going to feel guilty. They're going to feel shame. They're going to feel all these things. And really, I always like to tell people this. Satan doesn't care if you sin. Okay? Stay with me. Satan doesn't care if you sin. Why? Because Satan knows that cross took care of your sin, right? If Satan gets you to sin all day long, is he going to steal you away from God? They sinned. I got them now. I got the cross. They get me every time on that cross thing. Satan doesn't care if you sin. Satan cares if you quit. Satan cares if your guilt, your doubts, your depression, your shame, all of these things drive you away from the grace that has saved you. Now, you're going, oh, but once saved, always saved. It's not in my Bible, all right? Now, I'm not dogmatic on this, all right? If you work with once saved, always saved, we can have that discussion, and I'm not saying that's absolutely, that it's not that. I'm just not sure about that. And I know Satan is working, and he's not trying to get me to sin. He's trying to get me to quit. He's trying to get me to doubt. He's trying to get me to the point where I feel guilty and ashamed, and I don't want to feel that way anymore. So I walk away from my faith. I wander away from my faith. I turn my back on my faith. And let me be real clear. I don't believe for a second you can lose your faith, but I'm not totally convinced that I can't relinquish my faith and say, I don't want it. I don't want to feel guilty anymore under that, okay? Now, that's a conversation we can have further if any of you want to go there. I'm happy to do that, all right? But there's something here. His weak conscience is going to go eat that food, and how is he going to feel in that moment? 11, then the weak person, the brother for whom Christ died, is ruined in your knowledge. Now, that word ruined, you may have a different translation. Hopefully. Destroyed. That sounds bad. Is destroyed a bad thing? Does that sound like saved? No, in fact, it's the word from John 3:16, to perish. They perish in your knowledge. Now, how does that work? If I eat food sacrificed to idols, an idol that's nothing and a God that's nothing, do I lose my salvation if I do that? Sure they are. And then they do it, and what is their experience in that moment? Confusion, doubt, guilt, shame. And then what's the next step? Who wants to be in a religion that has all that? Who wants to be in a religion that every time I do something wrong, I feel ashamed and guilty, and he's doing it, but I can't do it, and I feel guilty, and eventually, what do? I'll go find some other religion that doesn't have as much baggage. I think the consequence is, it's not metaphorical here at all. If I'm eating in a temple Someone with a weak conscience goes and eats and follows my example in my knowledge, and they go through with this, they are destroyed, perished because of my knowledge. They followed my example. There's more to it than just A plus B equals C. There's a depth to this thing. I want you to kind of ponder and think through on your own. 12. Now, when you are sinning like this against the brothers, how did I sin? How am I sinning against a brother if I just go eat in a temple because I have the knowledge and I have my opinion, and my opinion says this is nothing and therefore I can do it? Am I sinning? Paul says if people offer you food, don't ask where it came from, just eat it. Is that not sin? Is the eating the sin? No. Where's the sin? If I'm sinning against this brother, how am I sinning against this brother if this is not a sin? Go ahead. What were you saying? Well, I'll tell them. But just because I tell them, does that mean that the paradigm has shifted? Yeah, you do. And what if you don't? What if you hold this opinion in an isolated fashion instead of a relational fashion, and where you're conveying this and teaching this and discipling this and encouraging this until they understand this? If I try and shove you off the ski jump before you're ready, am I sinning against you? Absolutely. All right? Because I'm going to cause you to do something you're not ready to do, and you're not theologically prepared to do, or your mind has not wrapped itself around this. Give me 10 years. Now I'm good. Now I'm not sinning anymore. But Paul says, in this case, you are sinning. Not only are you sinning, and you're wounding. That's a strong word right there. It means to physically beat someone, all right? This is what they did to Christ, this word, all right? You are wounding their weak conscience. And by doing that, you sin against who? Christ himself. What does he say at the sheep and the goats? When you did not give me something to eat and you did not give me something to drink, what you did to the least of them, you did to me. So when I sin against my brother, right, and Paul is trying to set this up. He's trying to say, look, there are people who have knowledge and there are people who don't, and they're working their way this way. And if you go with your opinions in isolation without considering your brother, your knowledge is going to puff you up if you will bring your brother along with you. If you'll go, you know what, I can't go into that. I can't eat there. Not because I can't eat there, but because I know somebody else will see this and will be harmed by this. This is the Josh Hamilton thing. I know if I get champagne out and start spraying it everywhere, my brother over there is going to be devastated. And we can go 1,000 different directions with this, can't we? Sexual immorality, all right? You talk about pornography. People go, well, you know, it's just a picture. It's no big deal. You shouldn't be affected by this. I'm like, but I will be, all right? And if you start to flaunt these things and you take your freedom, you go, well, it's no big deal to me. It should be no big deal to you. You are sinning against Christ in that moment because you're failing to understand the consequences and the effect that your actions will have on other people, okay? I don't go to any restaurant in this town and have alcohol and wouldn't. Number one, it tastes horrible, Catherine. So don't ever drink the stuff, all right? It really tastes bad, all right? I always say it's like Listerine, all right? Why would I want a margarita? Just give me some lemonade. I'm good to go, man, all right? It tastes bad, and it makes you do stupid things. I call it stupid juice at our house. My kids know this. If I say what's stupid, ask them what stupid juice is, they'll go, alcohol, all right? Because I grew up in a fraternity, right? So I'm fully aware of the effects of alcohol, all right? But I don't dare go anywhere in this town and do it because what if someone saw me? What if someone saw me? And you say, you can go, you know what? Is drinking alcohol wrong? No, I don't think it is at all. But if I go out into this world and someone sees me drinking, now I've ruined my testimony. I've ruined my ability, not because of the drink itself, but because of their understanding, because of their paradigm. Now I've ruined my ability to minister to them and to speak into their lives with any effect. I was at a restaurant one time, a well-known Christian singer that all of you would know, sitting there with a well-known Christian evangelist that some of you might know. And they are sitting there, and they had probably 4 or 5 drinks on the table. And I'm just sitting there going, never in a million years would I do that, because I know the effect. If I know who they are, and if I'm kind of like, what in the world, dude? Just have some iced tea, all right? If you want to drink at home or something like that. But you can affect people. And I think this is Paul's point, all right? The last verse, 13. Therefore, all right? Now, this is the strongest therefore you can possibly get in the Greek language, all right? It's dioper, all right? It's the strongest therefore. It's absolutely under no circumstance, therefore, moreover, herewith, all right? If food causes my brother to fall, it's the Greek word scandalizo, scandalize. If I scandalize or cause my brother to stumble, fall, trip, turn away from the faith, that's the implication, to turn away from their faith, I will never, and it doesn't say this in the Holman translation, I will never in this age, meaning what? Ever. Not as long as I live, even after I'm dead and people are still living, I'm still not going to eat, all right? It's until Jesus comes back. That's the implication. Not in this age will I eat meat. Not going to happen. So that, because there's an effect to this, so that I won't cause my brother to turn away, to fall, to stumble, to be scandalized. All right? So how important was food to Paul? How important was meat sacrificed to idols? Oh, but I really like the taste of it. Maybe I can get away with it. No, what's Paul saying? If there's a chance that someone might stumble because of this, I'm not going to eat it. Now, is that just dogmatism? Pragmatism? He's entitled to eat it. He has knowledge. He knows it's nothing. But yet he says, I will never, ever in this age until Jesus comes back, I ain't going to eat it. Why? Who does he love? Good. Go, Pamela. He loves his brother more than he loves himself. And isn't that the law of Christ? He loves his brother. He loves Christ. Does he love food? Sure, why not? But does that trump the others? Do we love our freedoms? Do we love our entitlements more than we love the people around us? All right? And this is Paul's point. Don't do anything that might in any way, under any circumstance, cause your brother, your sister to stumble. Because you are sinning, you are wounding them, and you're sinning against Christ. And what rule are you breaking? He only gave us one, right? Throughout the 10 Commandments, I said, I got one. 3 words. What are they, Catherine? Love one another. That's simple enough? That dictates what you do. All right? Any questions? Comments? Snide remarks? Anybody hungry? Milk duds. I got milk duds. I got junior mints. I got Raisinets that are the healthy stuff. All right, let me pray for y'all and we'll get out of here. Father, make us aware just of the people around us. Father, I pray that we would just stop assuming people understand or agree with us or understand or assume that people have the same paradigm as we do. Father, may we talk to people. May we have conversations with people. May we gauge where they are in their conscience, so that in no way would we violate the weakness of their conscience, but that we would bring them along, that we would help them, that we would teach them, that we would encourage them, that we would bring them to this full knowledge, and not just tell them what to believe, but really guide them into that, to strengthen them up, to work out with them so that they can be as strong in their knowledge as we might be in ours. Father, I pray that we would be like Paul. Absolutely, under no circumstances will I ever do anything that causes my brother to stumble, even if that means the neglect of all things in this life. If anything could be portrayed that way, I would turn away. I will not do that because I care more about my brother than I do my freedom. Father, may we have that attitude in us, and may we have the love for people that Paul had for these Corinthian believers. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.